Morning all, another Sunday. Now this week I'm going to talk about a couple of questions I received. I've received a couple of questions via email recently, and I've had questions in the past about this, so I thought, well, I might as well address them and do the video. So, the question is basically, why do I not have a Patreon account? And as I said, I've been asked it several times recently by email, and I've also been asked it on the channel before, and I've always sort of kind of ignored it, if I'm brutally honest. But the reality is I do have a Patreon account. I've had a Patreon account for quite some time. What I haven't done on Patreon is I haven't published a page that actually matches the channel. So because you don't publish a page, if you don't publish a page on Patreon, even though you have a Patreon account, nobody can find you because your page is not there for people to go to, if that makes any sense. So I may get round to publishing it over the Christmas period. So I've sort of set the Christmas period aside for doing lots of sort of admin-y things, and this is one of the admin-y things I may get round to doing. So if I do, and I have struggled with the publishing of videos as well, so there's probably going to be a little bit of a time lag between me recording this video and this video being published. So if the Patreon account is actually up and running by the time this video gets published, you know, I'll put it sort of down there somewhere. So if you wanted to go to the Patreon account, you can go to the Patreon account. The question is probably more correctly, why am I not using it? And I'll tell you why I'm not using it. This channel is kind of a hobby. It's kind of a release for me. I work in quite a stressful industry. I have quite a stressful job, and I've had lots of other stresses in my life over the last couple of years. So the rants, the mailbags, the equipment videos are just done for fun. I do them because I enjoy doing it. And some of you out there actually, you know, correspond, and it sparks some debate, and there's questions and answers on the channel, and that's all good because, you know, if people are talking about something, you know, those things will get picked up by search engines, and other people will find the content of how to do something, or why is this not a good idea, or why should you be doing something else. You know, that's kind of what this is all about. This is at the moment, it's a hobby. It's not a business, it's a hobby. And as I've said in the past, the channel is monetized, but that only generates a few pennies, and that really just covers very light overheads in terms of, you know, things like buying paper for the printer so that I can actually print out the scripts. You know, it's that sort of stupid stuff. You know, it doesn't pay for, it's not how I earn a living. I earn a living by doing some very interesting stuff in the IT world. That's what I am. I work in the IT world. So this is really just a hobby. So I can't live on the money that the channel makes. Not a hope in hell. In definitely in England. I mean, maybe in some parts of England. No, I couldn't even. No, not a hope in hell. Yeah, not a hope in hell. I don't know where I'm going there. If it made a bit more money, maybe that would be a different question. But it doesn't, and it's not designed to make money. It's not designed to be my sole source of income. It's designed to be a hobby that just covers its, you know, wipes its bottom, as some people might say. The problem with things like Patreon is, or any sort of sponsorship, is as soon as you start to go down the sponsorship route, then you are committing, people are paying for something. Now it depends on what you put on your Patreon account, what they are actually paying for, but you still are committing. They're paying you to deliver something. It's almost like a contract, if you like, and that requires time, and time is something I've really struggled with in the last couple of years. Many of you who watch the channel regularly know I've been embroiled in a very bitter, and I mean very bitter, argument with an ex-partner, and that has really taken its toll on me, in terms of health and in terms of time. Now that has come to an end, and I think there's a little bit of time just to sort of clear things up. but it really takes time, and it's taken my sanity as well. And that's one of the reasons why you've seen me travel a lot in the past couple of years. Not only am I traveling for business, but I'm also traveling because being out of the country, being away from the UK and everything that's been going on in the UK is the way I've maintained sanity. It's been very, very difficult. It's been very difficult on me, and it's been very difficult on the close people around me, my friends, who have seen what this has done to me. So it takes time. You know, there's one of the things that time, and the other thing is my job. Definitely over the last 2 years has been quite demanding in terms of travel. In terms of I've had to be in certain places for certain things, and that's just purely the nature of the work I'm doing at the moment. I dictate. I'm self-employed, so I dictate where I need to be to make sure that the clients I'm working for can achieve what they need to achieve. And quite often that means I need to be either at the other end of the country, like I was a few weeks ago, when I said I was right as far north as you can go. I was actually up in Shetland. Or sometimes I'm as far south as you can go, down on the south coast. So there's a big time element for me to be in the right place to make sure that the advice and the consultancy that I'm giving to my clients is correct, and that quite often means staying away, so I'm not having long drives, and I'm being on their sites or wherever I need to be first thing in the morning, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, etc., etc. So time is a big concern. And that's kind of one of the biggest issues why I really haven't pushed the whole Patreon thing, and really, like a lot of tubers, have gone down the Patreon route, because you have to give it time. You have to give the channel time. You have to give the Patreon people what you've promised to give them. And if you're not giving them what they're promised to give them, why should they support you? So it's sort of kind of like that. Now, time, as I just said, is freeing up. The legal case with my ex is now over. It didn't go my way, unfortunately, so I'm now clearing that up. And since the fall of this year, I've tried, because my time has started to free up, I've tried to start posting more and more videos on the channel. There's definitely been a regular rant, whereas the rant became a bit sort of patchy. Definitely more mailbag. There's definitely a lot more comments coming onto the channel. I've noticed that definitely over the last year, and also they've changed the YouTube algorithm, which now lets me see all the comments that I haven't responded to, which it was a little bit confusing in the old style interface. You couldn't actually tell who you'd responded to and who you hadn't responded to, but now you can, and it's much easier to do. So of course some of the mailbag items that I'm responding to actually have been asked some time ago, and I apologise for that. But again, that's time factors to be able to keep on top of what's going on the channel and what you guys are actually asking. So I am trying to sort of move that stuff through as quickly as possible. In a couple of months, I think all the legal issues will be out of the way, so my time will really start to free up a lot more. With my time being freed up, I can also start getting my diet, because to believe me, you don't get a figure like this without some effort. So I've got to start moving that out. Maybe some of you know, but I've got a heart condition, or I've had a heart scare, so I really do need to lose weight, and I couldn't really lose weight while all the nastiness was going on, because, to be honest, trying to be on a diet and trying to be miserable, and being miserable about being on a diet when people are just coming at you left, right, and centre is not the ideal thing. You've got to have strong mental attitude, and the way I fortify my mental attitude is, unfortunately, I tend to eat. I'm a nibbler. I like savouries, so cheddar biscuits and that sort of thing. The other thing that's going to happen in the new year is that I'm going to be moving from here, my home for the last 5 years. So that means that I will be moving from here. I will also be moving the studio in the new year. So I've got two big moves to happen, and people might say, well, the studio won't take you long. I believe you me, taking a studio to pieces and rebuilding it somewhere else takes weeks, because you're only doing it part-time. So yeah, I think the last time I moved the studio, it took me about 3 or 4 weeks before it was fully functioning. And the other thing that's going to allow me to do is start working on all the ideas that I've had on the channel for the last 3 or 4 years. I've got a list like that of ideas. Each time I think of an idea, I tend to, most of us are carrying on, of course my mobile phone's not here, it's over there, but most of us are carrying around a mobile phone. And I flip the Notes app open and I just jot down a few lines of what the idea is. And then I tend to develop those ideas into sort of videos, if I can, in hotel rooms and while I'm sitting in airport lounges and places like that. It becomes far easier doing it like that. But of course, if videos involve equipment and moving equipment around, then they are harder to shoot than this sort of video where I can just do it from the front room and just talk to you and talk to camera. So back to Patreon. The commitment of time is something I was not able to give, and I didn't think it was fair. But there is another issue I've had with Patreon, and the other issue I've had with Patreon is the fact who is going to pay to see me make videos, and that's kind of one of the other things I sort of thought. Why do this if nobody's going to sponsor you to do stuff? So really, for Patreon to work, people have to subscribe to Patreon, and the whole idea of Patreon is to sort of give you, or is to not supplement your income. That's probably the wrong word. The idea is to actually give you an income, or allow you to change your work-life balance so that you can actually pursue whatever the Patreon subject is. Now, I have to be honest and say at this point in time, I'm not prepared to give up my day job. I enjoy it far too much. It is a very, very interesting thing I do. So I'm not prepared to give that up. So Patreon would allow me to effectively lesser the amount of time potentially that I did dedicate. So I take one day off a fortnight and just concentrate on videos or something like that. But I'm not prepared to give up the day job at the moment. And it's a kind of a self-belief issue as well. There's sort of I don't know whether anyone remembers Wayne's World, where the bit with Jim Morrison standing there talking to Wayne and said, "If you do it, they will come." It's sort of kind of self-belief. If you do this, they will come. Now, I have to be honest and say, I did this. I put this channel together, and I've said it before, not as a money-making venture. But it was for my thoughts on the industry at a grassroots level. So not, the big pop stars, not the guys who are, going out and doing gigs to thousands and thousands of people every night. Really, this is sort of the reason why I've done this channel is more to do with the sort of more grassroots artists who, are not being bought into the next fantastic widget for Music and Co. Will make their music, better than Katie Tunstall or something like that. The reality is, a good tune is a good tune. And I don't mean that derogatory to anyone, but a good tune is a good tune. Having the right equipment merely enhances a good tune. That is really where I come from. And if we talk about legacy equipment, which this channel often does, and it's probably more focused towards legacy equipment than anything else, I could, if I wanted to, probably do everything I need to do with my Kronos, which, by the way, is about 5 years old now, and my Jupiter 80, both of which are fantastic keyboards. In fact, they're probably some of the best they probably are the best keyboards I've ever owned. In terms of what they are capable of doing. However, there's a whole lot of legacy stuff out there which I think people overlook because they're running to buy a Kronos. You can buy a Kronos. A Kronos will cost you in the UK for an 88 keyboard 3,200, 3,500, something in that region. That's what a Kronos will cost you to go and buy a brand new 88 key. Obviously a 61 and 76 key is slightly cheaper, but that's what it'll cost you to go and buy a Kronos, right? You can pick one of these up for £2,000, right? If you're more savvy like I was, I picked this up for less than that, much less than that. But you can pick them up relatively cheaply. I can tell you now that this is phenomenal. It's not a Kronos, but it is phenomenal, and it will do most of what you want it to do. If we're looking for really good stock sounds, then you could try a T1, a Triton, an old Fathom from Roland, or a V-Synth. Right, all these boards do phenomenal amounts of stuff, and people forget about them because obviously the marketing is moving on to the next greatest widget. I think I've said on numerous occasions now that I've got rack mount equipment in my studio that I use for sound expansion. Okay, those racks cost me less than £100 each. You get a whole lot of sound for less than £100. And if they're not your main board, you don't have to be your main board, but they can do a lot of the soundscaping around the edges of what you're trying to do. So don't ignore the legacy equipment. That's where this channel came from. So going back to, people have asked about Patreon. So as I said before, I'm going to try and publish a page over the Christmas period. I'm not quite sure. The benefits will be pretty sort of minor at this point in time. But if people subscribe to Patreon, I will push a Patreon page live by the 1st of January, and we'll start to see if Patreon does anything next year in terms of, does it support the channel. If you want to support the channel, feel free, go on to Patreon, and we'll consider what else we can offer through the Patreon channel, depending on the level of subscription that arrives on it. I mean, it's very simple to say, you know, if you've got, you know, one subscriber at $3, you know, that's $3 that goes towards something on the channel. Maybe that's buying more legacy equipment so I can do videos. Maybe it's towards field trips, because I'd really love to go to NAMM and do a field trip there. I've got a corporate entity that sits behind me, so I can get corporate entry to a lot of these places, so I can go to various shows, etc., and maybe that $3 a month will pay for those sort of field trips. But we'll see what happens. So 1st of January 2020 is when Patreon goes live for the channel, because you guys have asked for it. We'll see what happens. And on that note, bye-bye. If you liked the content of the video you've just seen, please give it a thumbs up. It just helps the YouTube algorithm with its selection process. If you want to leave a comment, please feel free to do that as well. Down below somewhere should be the ability to do that. I do try to respond to all the comments that are raised on the channel. Sometimes it takes me a few weeks because of what I'm doing, and I'm getting more and more comments and questions raised on the channel, so it just takes sometimes a little bit of time to do a bit of research. If you want to be notified when I put more rants, mailbergs, and videos about this sort of legacy tech and even modern tech on the channel, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and you'll be notified by YouTube when stuff happens. I try to publish at least 2 times a week, sometimes more, sometimes less. Until next time, bye bye.